You know what you ought to become. You have imagined it clearly, the disciplined version of yourself who rises early, works with purpose, maintains unshakable standards. You have resolved, perhaps many times, to begin this transformation. Tomorrow, you tell yourself, Monday, after this current crisis passes, when circumstances improve. But tomorrow never quite arrives, does it? Monday comes and some new obstacle appears. The crisis never fully passes, another always follows. Circumstances never improve sufficiently. And beneath these reasonable-sounding excuses lies a deeper belief that when you truly need to change, when the stakes are high enough, you will. That crisis will forge you. That necessity will provide what voluntary effort has not. I must tell you frankly, you are waiting for something that will never come. Crisis will not save you. Dramatic gestures will not transform you. The decisive moment you await will arrive only to reveal that you possess nothing with which to rise. But there is another way, a way that actually works, though it requires abandoning your cherished illusions about how transformation occurs. It requires seeing yourself clearly, starting almost absurdly small, and building patiently what crisis could never create. This way is open to you. The question is whether you will take it. Why crisis cannot save you. I must begin by destroying the most comfortable illusion you possess, the belief that crisis creates character. I have watched this delusion ruin countless men who might have been formidable. They wait, these unfortunate souls, for the decisive moment when circumstances will force them to become who they ought to be. When the crisis comes, they assure themselves, I shall rise to meet it. But when that moment arrives, and arrive it will, as certainly as dawn follows darkness, they discover with horror that they possess nothing with which to rise. Let me tell you of two officers I observed during the Boer War. The first was brilliant in conversation, always speaking of what he would accomplish when action came. He kept his equipment carelessly, arrived late to drills, made excuses for every neglected duty. His rifle, I noted, bore rust. His men had not been properly drilled in their formations. His maps were neither current nor carefully studied. When we finally engaged the enemy at close quarters, this promising officer froze utterly, his rifle jammed from poor maintenance. His men scattered because he had never trained them in the disciplines that become automatic under fire. He had believed that courage would arrive when needed, that somehow crisis would transform him into the leader he had always imagined himself to be. It did not. The second officer was unremarkable, in peacetime methodical, punctual, rigorous in matters that others dismissed as trivial. He cleaned his rifle daily, though no battle threatened. He drilled his men in the same formations until they could execute them in darkness. He studied terrain with the same attention, whether or not action was imminent. Under fire, while the first officer was paralyzed by the chaos he had not prepared for, this quiet man moved with calm precision. Every action had been practiced 1,000 times. The crisis merely revealed what his daily habits had already determined. You see the principle. Crisis is not your opportunity for transformation, it is your examination. You cannot learn calculus during the mathematics examination, you can only demonstrate what you learned beforehand. Similarly, crisis does not teach you courage, discipline, or skill, it only tests whether you possess them. The comfortable illusion that, when the time comes, I shall be ready, is the very thing that ensures you will not be ready. Every time you tell yourself, I'll become disciplined when I really need to, you guarantee failure. The neuromuscular pathways, the mental patterns, the reflexes required for exceptional performance are built through repetition over time, not summoned magically when circumstances demand them. The rifle not cleaned today, the drill skipped this week, the difficult conversation avoided this month. These small neglects accumulate silently until crisis exposes them catastrophically. Each evening, before you retire, ask yourself one question. If crisis struck tomorrow in my domain of responsibility, would today's actions have prepared me or left me wanting? This question transforms how you approach ordinary hours. The clerk who dreams of starting his own business, when the opportunity arises, must begin now, rising an hour earlier to study accounting, saving small amounts weekly, maintaining meticulous records. These mundane practices are building the capabilities his future will require. The crisis you fear, financial setback, health emergency, professional challenge is coming. The only question is whether today's actions are building capacity or merely postponing preparation. I cannot be more plain. You will not suddenly become adequate when circumstances demand adequacy. You will access only what you have already built. The futility of dramatic gestures. Having shown you that crisis cannot save you, I must now address another seductive delusion, the belief that dramatic gestures accomplish lasting change. Men seek the grand reformation, the intensive effort, the all-consuming project. They will fast for a week, work through the night in manic energy, make elaborate pronouncements about their transformed lives. These theatrical displays accomplish nothing. I have watched this pattern repeat itself 1,000 times. A man announces on Monday that he has seen the light, that he is reformed, that everything shall be different. He acquires books, clears his schedule, works 16 hours daily in an orgy of intensive study. For 7 days, he seems formidable. Then the intensity cannot be sustained. Within a fortnight, the books gather dust, and he has moved on to the next dramatic project, having convinced himself that this time will be different. It never is. During my wilderness years, those long years in the 1,930 seconds, when I was excluded from government and my warnings about Hitler were dismissed, I observed a colleague who epitomized this pattern. He would periodically announce his intention to master some field. The intensity of his initial effort was remarkable, but intensity is not the same as consistency. After each burst of manic activity, he would collapse into lethargy, having exhausted himself without building anything lasting. Meanwhile, another colleague read for 1 hour each evening without fail. Nothing dramatic, nothing impressive, merely 1 hour. Every evening, year after year. After 5 years, the second man had become genuinely learned. The first had become merely exhausted, with nothing but abandoned projects to show for his efforts. Nature is not impressed by your occasional heroics. She demands consistent payment in the small coin of daily discipline. The grand gesture is actually a form of avoidance. It allows you to feel you have taken action without doing the harder work of sustained, unglamorous effort. The all-night work session feels heroic. The regular bedtime feels mundane. But the mundane builds. The heroic exhausts and collapses. Consider the mathematics. 1 hour daily for a year produces 365 hours of practice. 10 hours once per month produces only 120 hours. The consistent practice wins by sheer accumulation. But more importantly, daily repetition builds neural pathways and automatic responses that intensive bursts cannot create. Mastery requires time-distributed practice, not time-compressed effort. There is also what I call the rebound effect. After dramatic efforts, the mind and body demand compensation. The week-long fast is followed by gorging. The intensive work session is followed by days of lethargy. You end up worse than when you began because the rebound undoes whatever the dramatic effort accomplished. When you are tempted by grand reformation, and you will be tempted, for the ego loves dramatic gestures, ask yourself this: what is the smallest action I could take daily that moves toward this goal? A man wishes to become physically strong. The dramatic gesture: joining an expensive gymnasium, hiring a trainer, committing to 2-hour sessions. This rarely lasts a month. The sustainable action: 10 push-ups each morning, every morning, without exception. After 3 months of consistency, gradually add more. But the foundation is built on the unglamorous minimum, not the impressive maximum. Start embarrassingly small, sustain ruthlessly, expand gradually. The man who can maintain 10 daily push-ups for 3 months can build to far more. The man who cannot maintain 10 will certainly fail at 200. This is the path that works. All others lead to the familiar cycle of ambitious beginning and disappointing collapse. The nation that forgot to prepare. I must now show you the principle operating at the scale of nations, for what destroys individuals destroys nations by the same mechanism. Britain's unpreparedness before 1939 offers the most instructive lesson about habits. I can provide a lesson purchased at a price nearly too high to pay. Throughout the 1,930 seconds, I spent my days in political exile, warning about German rearmament while serving in no official capacity. I watched my government make optimistic speeches while neglecting concrete preparations. Politicians assured the public that British spirit, courage, and determination would suffice when danger arrived. We believed or pretended to believe that when crisis came, our traditional qualities would carry the day. We neglected radar stations, fighter aircraft, trained pilots, anti-aircraft defenses. We made speeches about resolve, while our actual defenses crumbled from peacetime neglect. When German bombers came in 1940, it was not our speeches that saved us. It was the radar chain we had built during peacetime, though I had argued for more extensive preparation. It was the fighters we had manufactured, though I had demanded greater numbers. It was the pilots we had trained, though I had insisted we needed more. We survived by the narrowest margin, and only because a few men had insisted on building actual capacity during years when such preparation seemed alarmist. The parallel to individual life is exact. Spirit without preparation is merely sentiment. Courage without capacity is merely sentiment. Determination without developed capability is merely sentiment. What you do not build in advance cannot be summoned when needed. Here is the peacetime paradox. The time to prepare is precisely when preparation seems unnecessary. When danger is distant, men relax their discipline. Why maintain these rigorous standards when no threat is visible, they ask. But this is when capacity must be built, because once crisis arrives, you can only access what you already possess. You cannot manufacture radar stations while the bombers are overhead. You cannot train pilots while the battle rages. You cannot develop financial reserves while bankruptcy proceedings begin. Britain survived, not through patriotic feeling, though we had that in abundance, but through systematic preparations made before they were desperately needed. Your life requires similar systematic preparation. Financial reserves must be built before economic downturn arrives. Health practices must be established before illness strikes. Professional skills must be developed before opportunity or necessity demands them. Consider your life through the lens of national defense. Britain needed multiple systems working together: radar for early warning, fighters for interception, anti-aircraft guns for ground defense, trained personnel throughout. One element alone would have been insufficient. Similarly, you need multiple habits forming a defensive system: financial discipline, physical health, emotional regulation, continuous learning, relationship maintenance. One habit alone is insufficient. The system of habits provides resilience. For each major domain in your life, financial, professional, physical, relational, ask yourself, if crisis struck here next month, what systems have I built that would protect me? What preparations have I neglected? The man who saves nothing in prosperity has no defense against adversity. The man who neglects his body in youth pays catastrophically in age. The man who fails to develop skills in stable times has no capacity when disruption arrives. Do not make the error of believing, "It won't happen to me." Britain believed war could be avoided through wishful thinking. You may believe financial crisis, health emergency, or professional disruption will not touch you. This is dangerous optimism. Preparation is not pessimism, it is prudence. The question is not, do I feel threatened right now, but rather, what am I building that will serve me when threat arrives? When life proceeds smoothly, preparation feels unnecessary. This comfortable feeling is precisely when preparation is most necessary. The nation that forgets to prepare pays in blood. The individual who neglects preparation pays in suffering, failure, and wasted potential. Do not be that nation. Do not be that individual. The soldier's paradox: how discipline creates freedom. I shall now reveal the paradox at the heart of all transformation, the truth that reverses everything you believe about freedom and constraint. Here it is, stated plainly. True freedom is not the absence of restraint, but the presence of self-mastery through chosen constraints. I learned this principle by observing soldiers, both in my own military service and throughout my years of leading men in war. There are two types, and the contrast between them is instructive. The first type resents discipline. He chafes at every regulation, complains about drill, seeks shortcuts wherever possible. He believes himself a free spirit, unburdened by the rigid structures that constrain lesser men. Watch this man in actual combat, and you will see the truth. He is paralyzed by choice, crushed by pressure, unable to function when familiar structures collapse. He must decide, in the moment of crisis, whether to clean his weapon, how to position himself, what orders to give. His mind is cluttered with basics he should have automated. He is not free, he is enslaved to his own chaos. The second type of soldier has drilled until movements are reflexive. His rifle maintenance is automatic, he does it without deciding to do it. His formations are so thoroughly practiced that he can execute them in darkness or under fire without thought. Because these fundamentals operate automatically, his mind is free for higher-level thinking. While the first soldier is paralyzed by the need to make too many decisions simultaneously, the second soldier can assess the tactical situation, adapt to changing circumstances, seize opportunities as they arise. The paradox is complete. The disciplined man is more free than the undisciplined man, precisely because discipline has liberated him from the chaos of perpetual decision-making. Every decision, however small, depletes a finite resource. The man who must decide each morning whether to exercise has already lost. That decision fatigues him before he has accomplished anything of substance. The man who established long ago that exercise occurs at a specific time, non-negotiably, has removed this question from the realm of daily decision. He preserves his decision-making capacity for matters that genuinely require it. Consider the pianist who practices scales, tedious, repetitive, mechanical exercises that seem the opposite of musical freedom. Yet only after scales become automatic can the pianist actually play music with genuine expression. The fingers remember the patterns, the conscious mind is freed to attend to interpretation, emotion, nuance. The constraint, the disciplined practice of scales, liberates the musician. Or consider the sonnet form in poetry. 14 lines, specific rhyme scheme, regular meter. This seems severely restrictive. Yet this constraint has produced some of literature's finest work. The form does not limit the poet, it focuses his creative energy. When one is not deciding basic structural questions, one can attend fully to meaning, imagery, emotion. So it is with life. Disciplined habits do not restrict you, they focus your capacity on what matters. Apply this principle ruthlessly to your own life. Identify which activities should become automatic morning routine, exercise time, work hours, meal times, and which should remain subjects of active decision-making, creative projects, strategic choices, relationship responses. Automate the former category entirely. Remove these questions from daily consideration. This frees your finite decision-making capacity for the latter category, where it is actually needed. The professional who wastes his morning deciding whether to maintain basic disciplines has none left for genuine challenges. The professional who preserved his capacity by automating routines can think creatively about his actual work. This is not rigidity, it is wisdom. The undisciplined man believes he is free because he has no structure. In truth, he is enslaved to impulse, circumstance, and distraction. The disciplined man, with his automatic routines and established structures, possesses genuine freedom, the capacity to achieve his aims, respond effectively to challenges, and think clearly under pressure. Contemporary culture preaches authenticity through absence of restraint. This produces not freedom but chaos. Do not be deceived by this fashionable delusion. True freedom, the capacity to act purposefully rather than merely react helplessly, requires the architecture of discipline. Building character like fortifications. I shall now tell you something most men find difficult to accept. Character is not discovered within yourself, it is constructed through repeated action. We speak casually of brave men and cowardly men, honest men and dishonest men, as if these qualities were stamped at birth like the color of one's eyes. I have seen too many transformations to believe this comfortable fiction. You become brave by repeatedly choosing brave actions, even small ones. You become honest by repeatedly telling truth, even when lies would be convenient. You become disciplined by repeatedly maintaining discipline, even when no one watches. Character is the sum of your established patterns, nothing more and nothing less. This is simultaneously humbling. You cannot claim your virtues as natural endowments, and empowering. You can construct the character you wish to possess. During my long career, I knew a young officer who was naturally timid. Before battle, he trembled. Fear gripped him in ways that it did not grip other men. But he had grasped a truth that most men never discover. Courage could be practiced. Each day, deliberately, he chose one small action that required courage. He spoke an unpopular truth in a meeting where silence would have been easier. He maintained a difficult standard when others were abandoning theirs. He confronted a problem that others avoided. None of these actions seemed particularly brave. They were small matters, really. But he performed them daily, without exception, for 5 years. After 5 years of this deliberate practice, this naturally fearful man had become one of the bravest officers I knew. His transformation was not mysterious. It was the predictable result of 5 years of daily practice in courage. He had built courage as men build fortifications, brick by brick, day by day, until a structure stands that cannot be easily shaken. The principle applies to every character trait. One brave action does not make you brave. 1,000 brave actions make you brave. The trait is the accumulated result of repeated practice. Just as one brick is not a fortress but 10,000 bricks are, one honest action is not integrity but 10,000 honest actions are. Character forms through accumulation. Moreover, and this is crucial, small actions count equally with large ones for this purpose. The brick at the fortress's foundation and the brick at its summit are of equal importance to the structure. Similarly, the small, honest action matters as much as the large one for building the trait. Telling a small truth when a small lie would be convenient builds integrity as surely as telling a large truth when a large lie would be profitable. Do not despise small opportunities to practice virtue. They are the material from which character is constructed. I must tell you frankly, courage, honesty, discipline, these are not mystical qualities bestowed by fate. They are skills developed through practice, exactly like playing piano or speaking French. The man who wishes to become brave must practice bravery as the pianist practices scales. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathways, reinforces the patterns, makes the virtue more automatic and more reliable. If you wish to become more honest, practice honesty daily in small things. When a clerk gives you incorrect change in your favor, return it. When someone asks your opinion and the truth is mildly uncomfortable, speak it anyway. When you make a mistake, admit it rather than concealing it. These small practices build the patterns that constitute honesty as a character trait. Over months and years, you will discover that honesty has become your default response. This is not because you were born honest, it is because you built honesty through practice. If you wish to become more courageous, practice small, courageous actions daily. Speak up in the meeting when others stay silent. Have the difficult conversation you have been avoiding. Face the small fear rather than finding reasons to postpone. Each practice strengthens the capacity. Choose one character trait you wish to develop: courage, honesty, discipline, patience, generosity. For 30 days, engineer one daily opportunity to practice it. Keep a written record. Today I practiced courage by speaking an unpopular truth. Watch the trait strengthen through deliberate, repeated practice. The character you wish to possess must be built through the deliberate repetition of actions consistent with that character. There is no other way. But there is also no limit to how far this method can take you. The timid officer became genuinely brave. So may you become whatever you practice being. The internal structures that enable action. Before you can be free within structures, you must build structures within yourself. The sculptor constrains himself to patient work upon marble, and through that constraint, liberates the form within. So must you work upon yourself. Most men resist this truth. They believe structures limit them. But consider, without grammatical structures, language conveys nothing. Without musical structures, sound is merely noise. Without architectural structures, buildings collapse into rubble. Structure does not limit possibility, it enables it. During the darkest days of 1940, when invasion seemed imminent and most men were paralyzed by fear, my internal structures preserved my sanity and capacity to function. Each morning, regardless of the crisis, I worked in bed until lunch. This was not indulgence, it was recognition that my mind was clearest in those hours, and I would not squander this resource on travel or trivial meetings. Each afternoon, when possible, I painted at my easel or walked the grounds at Chartwell. Each evening brought conferences and work until the early hours. These patterns were not rigidity, they were the framework that allowed me to think clearly when thinking clearly was desperately needed. The external world was collapsing around us. France had fallen. Our army had barely escaped annihilation at Dunkirk. German bombers were beginning their assault. Men far more experienced than I were, losing their capacity for rational thought under the pressure. But because my internal structures held firm, because my daily patterns remained constant, I preserved the mental clarity required for decision-making. My habits were the foundation from which all effective action proceeded. You must understand that one habit is useful, but multiple interconnected habits form a system. My wake time, work hours, physical activity, meals, reading, and sleep, these habits stacked together to create the architecture of an effective day. The architecture supported everything else I attempted. Without it, I would have been merely reactive, blown about by the chaos of external events. As your ambitions grow more complex, your need for structure grows proportionally. The man attempting simple goals can manage with minimal structure. The man attempting significant achievement requires sophisticated architecture of habits. Complex buildings require complex foundations. Simple buildings can rest on simple foundations. Your life's structure must match your life's demands. Begin building architecture with foundational elements. Establish consistent wake time. This anchors everything following. Create a sequence of morning actions that occur in the same order each day. Hydration, exercise, hygiene, breakfast, commencement of work at a fixed hour. This morning structure determines the quality of everything that follows. Without it, you are starting each day in chaos. Establish work structure. Protected hours for important work, regular break times, clear end of work ritual. Without this structure, work bleeds endlessly into life, exhausting you without corresponding achievement. Establish evening structure. Time for relationships, dinner, reading, preparation for the next day, consistent bedtime that allows sufficient sleep. This structure ensures recovery and maintains the relationships that matter. The architecture need not be rigid in every particular. The specific activities may vary from day to day, but the structure must hold. Wake time remains consistent even if morning activities differ. Work hours are protected even if specific projects vary. The architecture provides stability. Within that stability, you have freedom to respond to circumstances. Do not attempt to construct complete architecture overnight. That guarantees collapse. Build one structure at a time until it holds firm, then add the next. First, establish wake time. When that is automatic, add morning sequence. When that is automatic, add work hours. Gradually, patiently, systematically, you build the architecture that will support everything you wish to accomplish. The 3-day mirror, seeing yourself clearly. Before ambitious plans, before elaborate commitments, before grand pronouncements about your transformed life, you must do something most men cannot bear. You must see yourself as you actually are, not as you wish to be, not as you fear you might be, as you are. This requires courage of a particular kind, the courage to inventory your actual daily habits without justification, excuse, or self-deception. Most men cannot perform this exercise. They will find urgent reasons to postpone it. Their resistance is itself instructive. They already suspect what they will discover, and they fear the truth. But you cannot change what you refuse to see clearly. Your current life is the perfect crystallization of your current habits. If you are in debt, it is because habits of spending exceed habits of earning and saving. If you are ignorant in areas where you wish to be knowledgeable, it is because habits of distraction exceed habits of study. If you are physically weak when you wish to be strong, it is because habits of indulgence exceed habits of discipline. The mirror shows the truth. Only after seeing truth clearly can you begin changing it. I shall tell you of a young officer who came to me complaining that he lacked time for professional development. He was always busy, he explained, overwhelmed by duties, unable to find hours for the study that would advance his career. I asked him to perform a simple exercise. For 3 consecutive days, record precisely how he spent each hour. Not what he intended to do, what he actually did. He resisted. Too busy, he protested. I insisted. This was not a request, it was an order. When he finally completed the exercise, he discovered 4 hours daily spent in the officer's mess, making idle conversation, 2 hours reading newspapers, 1 hour on elaborate grooming that accomplished nothing of substance, 7 hours daily that could have been redirected toward the study he claimed to lack time for. The problem was not lack of time, it was allocation of time he had refused to examine. The mirror revealed what excuses had concealed. This is universally true. Every human being deceives himself about his actual behavior. We remember our intentions more vividly than our actions. We notice our occasional virtuous behaviors while overlooking our frequent poor ones. Accurate self-assessment requires external observation, writing down what you actually do, not what you intended to do or believe you did. The exercise you most resist is often the one you most need. If examining your actual time use provokes anxiety or elaborate reasons why you cannot possibly perform this audit, this resistance reveals that you already suspect you are wasting it. The resistance is itself a confession. Pay attention to it. Here is the protocol. Choose 3 consecutive days when your schedule is typical, not vacation, not emergency, but ordinary days that represent your actual life. Every hour, write what you actually did during that hour. Be ruthlessly honest. No one will see this record but you. After 3 days, calculate hours spent on truly important work, hours on necessary maintenance meals, hygiene, commute, sleep, and hours on activities you cannot justify. Most men discover they have far more discretionary time than they believed. They simply waste it on activities they would be ashamed to defend if questioned. The young officer, too busy for study, was spending 7 hours daily on trivialities. You will likely discover similar patterns. The audit is painful. It is also the foundation of all improvement. What is measured can be managed. What remains unmeasured continues unchanged. Do not choose exceptional days for your audit. Do not audit vacation or crisis days. Audit typical days. The average reveals the pattern. Do not record what you planned to do, record what you actually did. The gap between intention and action is precisely what the audit reveals. When you discover wasted hours, you will be tempted to justify them. Resist this temptation. The audit's value lies in seeing clearly, not in making excuses. This exercise will disturb you. That is the point. The comfortable illusion that you lack time for improvement will collapse. The audit reveals you have time, you simply waste it. This is simultaneously dismaying and empowering. Dismaying because you must confront years of squandered hours. Empowering because you have more capacity than you realized. The victim mentality, I have no time, collapses. The agent mentality, I must use my time better, emerges. Transformation becomes possible because self-deception has been removed. The water glass strategy, starting small, linking strong. Having seen clearly how you actually spend your time, you now face the practical question, where to begin? I shall give you a method that works, though your ego will resist it because it seems too simple, too small, too insignificant to matter. But this is precisely why it works. Transformation proceeds by inches, not by miles. Most men cannot endure this truth. They want to revolutionize their entire existence on Monday morning. By Wednesday, they have collapsed under the weight of ambitions that exceeded their capacity. I have watched this pattern destroy countless well-intentioned efforts. The grand plan, the comprehensive reformation, the total transformation, these fail with predictable regularity. I shall give you a better method. Start with one habit so small you cannot reasonably fail. Perhaps you will drink a glass of water upon rising. That is all. Not a complete health regimen. Not a transformation of your entire morning. Simply 1 glass of water every morning, without exception. This seems absurdly minimal. Your ego will protest that such a small action cannot possibly matter. Ignore your ego. What you are actually accomplishing is far more significant than the water itself. You are proving to yourself that you can make and keep a commitment to yourself. You are training the faculty of self-command in small things. Most men lack this capacity because they have repeatedly failed at ambitious commitments. They cannot trust themselves because past experience has taught them they are unreliable. Starting small rebuilds this capacity for self-trust. I observed a clerk who wished to improve his health. Rather than the typical pattern joining a gymnasium, working intensively for 2 weeks, abandoning everything, when the initial enthusiasm faded, he adopted what I call the water glass strategy. 1 glass upon rising, daily, for 1 month, nothing else. It seemed ridiculously small. But after 1 month of perfect consistency, 30 consecutive mornings without a single miss, he added a second element, 10 push-ups, immediately after drinking the water. After another month of perfect consistency in both actions, he added a third, a short walk before breakfast. After 6 months of this patient, systematic construction, he had built an impressive morning routine that included hydration, exercise, cardiovascular activity, and a nutritious breakfast. The key was starting so small that failure was impossible. Here is the crucial principle. Do not add the second habit until the first is automatic. Automaticity means you perform the action without deciding to perform it, without using willpower, without internal debate. You simply do it because it is what you do at that time. This typically requires 30 to 60 days of perfect consistency. Patience here prevents collapse later. Once the first habit is automatic, link the second habit to it. After I drink water, I will do 10 push-ups. The existing habit pulls the new habit into being. This works because the human brain loves patterns. Linked habits form chains. Chains form routines. Routines form the architecture of an effective life. Choose one habit for yourself, one absurdly small habit you will perform daily for 30 days. Examples: drink 1 glass of water upon rising, make your bed immediately after rising, write 1 sentence in a journal before sleep, read 1 page before retiring. Do this minimum every single day for 30 days. Do not expand. Track completion with marks on a calendar. After 30 days of perfection, add a second small habit linked to the first. Your ego will resist. 5 push-ups seems too easy, I'll do 50. By day 4, you are exhausted and abandon everything. Start absurdly small. After 2 weeks of success, you will be tempted to add 3 new habits simultaneously. All will collapse. Add 1 habit at a time. After the previous is automatic. The fortress begins with a single brick, consistently laid. Each brick seems insignificant. 10,000 bricks create something indestructible. You are not building habits, you are building the capacity to build habits. This capacity, once developed, serves you for life. The fallen soldier rises recovery as discipline. I must now address what separates those who succeed long-term from those who collapse at the first setback. You will fail. You will break your chain of perfect days. Accept this now. The question is not whether this will happen, it will. The question is what you do the next day. During military training, I watched soldiers fall during marches. Some gave up immediately, declaring the exercise too difficult, sitting by the roadside nursing their pride. Others rose, brushed themselves off, and continued marching. The physical fall was nothing. The mental response was everything. Those who knew how to fail and resume became formidable soldiers. Those who treated any failure as permanent defeat remained forever weak. You will oversleep one morning. Travel will disrupt your routine. Illness will intervene. Some circumstance beyond your control will break the pattern you have been maintaining. Do you say, "I have failed, the effort is useless," and abandon everything you have built? Or do you simply resume without drama? The difference between these responses is the difference between strength and weakness. I learned this principle through my painting practice. I often produced poor work. A day's painting would be a disaster, composition wrong, colors muddy, the whole thing unsalvageable. I observed that amateur painters respond to such failures by abandoning painting for weeks or declaring they lack talent. This response guarantees they will never develop skill. I learned instead to scrape the canvas clean or set the failed painting aside and begin a fresh one the next day. The failure taught me something about what not to do. The act of resuming taught me even more. It taught me that I was not fragile, that setbacks were data rather than verdicts. When you break your habit chain, you have acquired information. This is how you fail under these circumstances. This data is valuable for preventing future failures. But the failure itself is not a verdict on your capacity, it is simply information about what needs adjustment. After missing your habit once, the next occurrence is critical. Miss once, you have a data point. Miss twice consecutively, you have begun a pattern. Miss 3 times, you have probably abandoned the habit entirely. Therefore, miss once, resume immediately at the next opportunity without self-recrimination or delay. The capacity to fail and resume without drama is itself a skill that must be practiced. Each time you fail and successfully resume, you strengthen this capacity. Eventually, you become resilient, capable of maintaining overall patterns, even when individual instances fail. This is true strength, not the absence of failure, but the capacity to fail and continue. When you miss your morning habit because you overslept, the critical moment is not the missed morning that is past and cannot be changed. The critical moment is the next morning. If you resume, the miss was merely a data point. If you do not resume, the miss becomes the beginning of abandonment. Similarly, when travel disrupts your routine, do not wait until you return home to resume. Resume the next available morning, even imperfectly. The traveler who can maintain some version of his habits despite disruption has achieved true resilience. One missed day does not destroy a habit. Treating it as catastrophic often does. Avoid what I call the Monday start trap. I failed Thursday, so I will resume Monday when I can start fresh. No, resume Friday. There is no special virtue in Monday. This is procrastination disguised as planning. The soldier who falls does not spend an hour cursing himself for falling. He rises immediately and continues marching. However, I must warn you, 1 miss is data, 3 consecutive misses is abandonment. If you miss 3 times in succession, you have likely lost the habit and must begin building it again from the start. This is why the first miss is so critical. Resume immediately. Do not allow the second miss to occur. The perfectionist mentality, if I cannot do this perfectly, I will not do it at all, guarantees failure. The resilient mentality, I will maintain this overall pattern despite occasional failures, produces success. Resilience beats perfection. The man who maintains his habits 90% of the time for 10 years accomplishes far more than the man who maintains them perfectly for 3 weeks and then abandons them. Be the resilient man. Fall and rise. Fall and rise. But never stop marching. 2 men, 2 different days. Let me show you 2 men moving through identical circumstances. Both face the same 24 hours. Both encounter the same demands, the same opportunities, the same challenges. Yet their days unfold entirely differently. The contrast reveals everything. The first man awakens without purpose. He has no consistent wake time. It varies based on when he happened to fall asleep, which varies based on when he happened to cease his evening activities, which varies based on impulses he does not control. He lies in bed checking correspondence on his telephone, wasting the mental clarity of morning on trivial matters. He rises at the latest possible moment, already behind before his day has properly begun. He breakfasts hurriedly, if at all, arrives at his work depleted, having expended energy on chaos rather than preserving it for important tasks. His day unfolds as a series of reactions to whatever demands attention loudest. He has no protected time for important work, so urgent matters crowd it out. He responds to every knock on his door, every message, every request. He feels constantly busy, yet accomplishes little of substance. By afternoon, he is exhausted not from meaningful work, but from perpetual reaction to demands. He lunches whenever hunger strikes rather than at a regular time, disrupting whatever rhythm he might have established. His afternoon is scattered, fragmented, consumed by putting out fires. Evening arrives and he collapses. He has no energy for relationships, for reading, for anything requiring genuine attention. He seeks intense stimulation, loud entertainment, alcoholic drink, any sensation strong enough to penetrate his exhaustion. He does not seek these things from joy, but from desperate need to fill the void within. He falls into bed at unpredictable hours, having accomplished little he set out to accomplish. The next day repeats this pattern, and the next. Years pass in this manner. He is always busy. He rarely accomplishes anything significant. Now observe the second man. He rises at a consistent hour, chosen deliberately rather than determined by random circumstances. His wake time does not vary by more than minutes, regardless of when he retired. This consistency anchors his entire day. His morning routine follows an established sequence: hydration, physical movement, hygiene, nutritious breakfast. These occur in the same order each morning, requiring no decisions, consuming no willpower. He begins his important work during the morning hours when his mind is freshest, having protected these hours from interruption. His work time is genuinely protected. Colleagues know not to interrupt during these hours, except for genuine emergencies. Because he is not constantly interrupted, he accomplishes more in 2 protected hours than the first man accomplishes in an entire chaotic day. He takes his midday meal at a regular time, allowing his body and mind to recover. His afternoon contains time for physical activity. If his work is mental, he moves his body. If his work is physical, he engages his mind differently. This variation prevents exhaustion. Evening brings time for relationships, for reading, for preparation for the next day. He retires at an hour that allows sufficient sleep, calculated backward from his consistent wake time. He does not need intense stimulation because he is not desperately trying to fill a void. His day has been purposeful and therefore satisfying. The next day follows the same structure, and the next. Years of this pattern accumulate into extraordinary achievement. These 2 men are not different in talent. They are not different in opportunity. They are different in structure. The first man is blown about by whatever circumstances arise. The second man determines his priorities and maintains them despite noise and distraction. The first man reaches evening exhausted yet dissatisfied. The second man reaches evening with the deep satisfaction of having done what he intended to do. I have known both types throughout my career. The first type always seemed busy yet accomplished little. The second type seemed to have more hours in the day, but they had the same 24 hours. The difference was not time. The difference was structure. The architecture of habits that structured one man's days while the other man's days structured him. Which man are you? Be honest. If you recognize yourself in the first description, know that you can become the second, but not through dramatic gesture, not through sudden transformation. Through patient construction of structure, one habit at a time, until the architecture stands firm. The 10 non-negotiables. I shall now give you 10 specific practices that form the foundation of an effective life. These are not suggestions to consider when convenient. These are not options to implement if they suit your temperament. These are orders to execute. Every human being who wishes to become formidable must establish these fundamentals. They are universal requirements that remain true regardless of your profession, your circumstances, or your natural inclinations. First, consistent wake time. Sleep's end must occur at the same hour daily. This anchors everything following. Varying wake times creates perpetual disruption. You are constantly adjusting to a new rhythm, never establishing one. The body and mind require consistency to function at their peak. Second, immediate hydration. Upon waking, drink water. Your body has been hours without fluid. This is not mysticism, it is maintenance of the biological instrument you inhabit. Third, morning achievement. Accomplish one significant thing before the day's demands begin. Defend the first hour of your day for work of genuine importance. This ensures the important is not sacrificed to the urgent, as it inevitably is if you begin your day by responding to others' demands. Fourth, physical movement. If your vocation is mental, move your body daily. If your vocation is physical, move in ways your work does not require. The instrument requires varied use to maintain its capabilities. Fifth, protected work hours. Establish specific hours for your most important work. Defend these hours absolutely. Let nothing, no colleague, no distraction, no convenience intrude upon them. Important work requires protected time. Without protection, it does not occur. Sixth, midday restoration. Take a meal and brief rest at midday. Your mind cannot sustain maximum effort for 12 unbroken hours, though it will pretend it can. Brief restoration allows stronger effort in afternoon hours. Seventh, evening review. Before sleep, review the day in writing, however briefly. What was accomplished? What was avoided? What shall be different tomorrow? This practice prevents days from dissolving into generalized impressions and forces honest assessment. Eighth, relationship protection. Establish specific time for those who matter to you. Without deliberate protection, relationships are inevitably sacrificed to demands that seem more urgent but are ultimately less important. Ninth, continuous learning. Read daily, even briefly. The mind requires fuel as the body requires food. Even 15 minutes of quality reading daily compounds into substantial knowledge over years. 10th, sufficient sleep. Work backward from your required wake time to determine necessary bedtime. Sleep is not weakness, it is recognition that even the finest machine requires maintenance and cannot operate indefinitely without consequences. During my most productive years, these practices structured every day. Morning work in bed until lunch, because I knew my mind was clearest then. Substantial lunch because I knew I would work late. Afternoon, physical activity, painting, bricklaying. Walking because the body requires movement. Evening work and conversation because both important work and important relationships require protected time. Late retirement because significant work requires hours. Sufficient sleep because exhaustion serves no one. You cannot establish all 10 simultaneously. That guarantees failure. Build gradually. Week 1. Establish consistent wake time only, making it non-negotiable. Week 2. Add immediate hydration. Week 3. Add morning achievement hour. Week 4. Add physical movement. Continue this pattern. Each practice must become automatic before the next is added. This requires patience approximately 10 weeks to establish all 10, but the alternative, attempting all simultaneously and collapsing by day 4, wastes far more time. The clerk cannot control his employer's hours, but he can control his wake time and evening hours. The soldier cannot dictate his schedule, but he can control what he does within available time. Adapt the specifics to your circumstances, but do not abandon the principles. These 10 practices are not conveniences, they are requirements. They make everything else possible. Neglect them, and you remain vulnerable regardless of your talents. Maintain them, and you become resilient regardless of your circumstances. When everything else collapses, habits prove their worth not during easy times but during crisis. Anyone can maintain routine when life proceeds smoothly, when no unusual demands arise, when circumstances favor consistency. The test is whether your structure holds when everything else is uncertain, when external supports collapse, when the world seems to be ending. I speak from direct experience. Habits that seemed merely convenient in peacetime became essential in war. In May 1940, our situation appeared hopeless. France was collapsing before the German onslaught. Our army was trapped at Dunkirk, facing annihilation. Invasion of Britain seemed imminent. Men far more experienced than I were, paralyzed, unable to think clearly, unable to act decisively, unable to function under the crushing weight of circumstances. I attribute my capacity to continue functioning to this. My habits remained constant. While the external world was chaos, my internal structure was stable. I rose at the same hour. I worked at the same times. I maintained the same patterns. This stability was not escape from reality, it was the foundation from which I could engage with reality effectively. The habits that seemed merely personal preference in peacetime became the anchor that prevented me from being swept away by the storm of events. Because my habits held, my capacity held. Because my capacity held, I could think clearly when clear thinking was desperately needed. This is universally true. In crisis, small weaknesses become catastrophic failures. The man with weak habits collapses entirely when pressure arrives. But the man with strong habits discovers they become more valuable, not less. The stable foundation allows him to function when others cannot. Your morning routine may seem trivial during normal times. During crisis, it may be the only stability in your entire day. Maintaining it preserves your sanity and your capacity for effective action. The temptation during crisis is to abandon routine entirely. Everything is chaos, you tell yourself, so routine is irrelevant. This is precisely backward. When everything external is chaos, internal structure is most necessary. When the external world provides no stability, your habits provide it. This is not rigidity, it is wisdom. You discover whether you have truly established habits or merely practiced them in favorable conditions. The habit that survives disruption is truly established. The habit that collapses at the first challenge was always fragile. This is the resilience test. Not whether you can maintain habits when circumstances favor them, but whether you can maintain them when circumstances oppose them. During genuine crisis, illness, family emergency, major disruption, apply what I call the minimum maintenance protocol. Identify your absolute minimum. Perhaps just wake time and 10 minutes of important work. Maintain this minimum. It preserves the chain. When crisis passes, you rebuild from this foundation, rather than starting entirely over. During illness, perhaps you can maintain only wake time and hydration. Maintain these. When health returns, everything else rebuilds from this foundation. During travel, identify which habits can continue and which must pause. Maintain what you can. During family crisis, your work habits may pause, but your morning routine and sleep schedule should continue if at all possible. These provide the stability that allows you to handle the crisis. The principle is straightforward. Maintain something. The chain must not break completely, or you will struggle mightily to restart it. Maintain the minimum and rebuild gradually when circumstances permit. This approach, maintaining minimum standards rather than abandoning everything, is what separates those who survive crisis with their capacities intact from those who collapse and must rebuild from nothing. All or nothing thinking guarantees failure. I cannot do my full routine, so I will do nothing. This ensures collapse. Doing the minimum beats doing nothing. The man who maintains even 10% of his habits during crisis can rebuild quickly. The man who abandons everything must start over entirely. Do not use crisis as excuse for abandonment. Crisis may require modification but not surrender. After crisis passes, actively restart disrupted habits. Do not assume they will automatically resume. They will not. Deliberately, intentionally, rebuild them. The mechanism of freedom. I must now reveal the ultimate truth about habits, the principle that elevates this practice from mere technique to fundamental philosophy. Habits are the mechanism by which you seize whatever degree of freedom is available to mortal creatures. The ancient question persists through all of human history. Are we products of circumstance, blown about by forces beyond our control? Or do we possess genuine agency, the power to shape our own destinies? The answer lies between these poles. We cannot choose our circumstances. You cannot choose where you are born, to whom, in what era, with what natural endowments. I was born into an aristocratic family with political connections, an advantage I did nothing to earn. But I was also born with poor health, weak academic performance, and lost my father early, leaving me without the guidance many young men receive. The question was whether these circumstances, both favorable and unfavorable, would determine my life entirely, or whether I could shape my own path despite them. The answer came through habits. By establishing patterns of intensive reading, I overcame my poor education. By maintaining patterns of constant writing, I developed my capacity for expression. By maintaining patterns of physical activity despite natural weakness, I built the stamina required for long years of demanding work. Gradually, through sustained patterns of action, I created circumstances quite different from what my birth circumstances might have predicted. Habits were the mechanism of this transformation, from determined creature to purposeful agent. You cannot will yourself to be different. Willing accomplishes nothing. You can only establish patterns that gradually make you different. The man who wishes to become educated cannot simply decide to be educated, he must establish a habit of daily reading. Over years, this habit transforms him from ignorant to learned. The habit is the mechanism. 1 day of good habits does not change your circumstances. 1,000 days of good habits transforms your circumstances entirely. Consider financial freedom. It is not achieved through sudden wealth that is merely circumstance, as easily lost as gained. It is achieved through habits of earning more than spending, saving a portion, investing wisely, maintained for years. The habit creates the circumstance. Professional freedom is not achieved through lucky breaks, those are circumstance. It is achieved through habits of skill development, excellent work, relationship building, maintained for years. The habit creates the opportunity. Physical capacity is not achieved through sporadic intensive exercise that is merely temporary strain. It is achieved through habits of daily movement, proper nutrition, adequate sleep, maintained for years. The habit creates the capacity. I was born with certain advantages and certain disadvantages, but neither determined my life. What determined my life was the habits I established and maintained over decades. These habits gradually shifted my circumstances until I possessed capacities and opportunities that my birth circumstances did not guarantee. This is the mechanism of freedom. Sustained patterns of action, maintained over time, gradually create new circumstances. The pattern is universal. Establish the habit. Maintain it through years. Watch circumstances shift to align with the pattern you have built. This is not magical thinking, it is the sober recognition that sustained action over time changes reality. You are not trapped by your current circumstances. You are trapped only by the absence of habits that would shift those circumstances. Build the habits, and freedom follows. The man who believes himself victim of circumstance, powerless to change his situation, is often more comfortable than the man who accepts he has agency. Why? Because agency requires responsibility. If you possess the power to change your circumstances through sustained patterns of action, then your current circumstances reflect your past patterns of action. This is uncomfortable truth, but it is also liberating truth. What has been built through past patterns can be rebuilt through new patterns. Your habits are how you grasp agency. They are how you become a free agent rather than a reactive creature. Character, civilization, and your duty. A nation, like a man, is building itself through beneficial habits or destroying itself through destructive ones. Britain survived 1940. Not because we were more intelligent than our enemies. German technical excellence in many fields exceeded ours. Not because we possessed superior resources. Germany's industrial might vastly outmatched ours when war began. We survived because we had certain habits established over centuries. Parliamentary democracy that prevented tyrannical decisions, rule of law that maintained order even under pressure, traditions of liberty that stiffened resistance to tyranny, patterns of responding to existential threat with determination rather than surrender. When crisis arrived, these habits operated automatically. We did not need to invent democracy under bombardment, we had practiced it for centuries. We did not need to establish rule of law during invasion threat, it was already deeply ingrained. These national habits, built over generations, made certain responses automatic when crisis demanded them. The individual who masters his habits, thus serves his nation, becomes one of those reliable stones upon which great edifices can be built. Your personal discipline is not merely personal, it is your contribution to civilization itself. During the war, I observed that Britain's survival depended not primarily on brilliant leadership, though we endeavored to provide it, but on millions of ordinary citizens maintaining their duties despite extraordinary pressure. The factory worker who arrived punctually despite bombing, the clerk who maintained records despite chaos, the railway worker who kept trains running despite danger, the mother who protected and educated her children despite fear. These millions of small disciplines, duties performed, commitments kept, standards maintained constituted our actual defense. They were not dramatic, they received no recognition, but they were essential. The nation that can maintain daily disciplines during crisis survives. The nation whose citizens abandon discipline when pressure arrives collapses, regardless of its resources or the brilliance of its leadership. National character is individual character aggregated. A nation's strength is the sum of its citizens' character. The nation of disciplined individuals can accomplish extraordinary things. The nation of undisciplined individuals accomplishes nothing, regardless of natural advantages. Civilization requires constant maintenance. Democracy does not maintain itself automatically. Rule of law does not continue without effort. Scientific advancement does not proceed without disciplined inquiry. Artistic achievement does not occur without disciplined practice. These require millions of people performing daily duties, showing up for work, maintaining standards, keeping commitments, preserving traditions, teaching the next generation. When individuals abandon discipline, civilization decays. You may believe your personal habits matter only to you. You are mistaken. If you maintain discipline, you are one more reliable stone in civilization's foundation. If you abandon discipline, you are one more point of weakness. Multiply your choice by millions of citizens, and you see why civilizations rise or fall. The choice each individual makes about his own discipline collectively determines whether civilization flourishes or collapses. Before abandoning a commitment or discipline, ask yourself, if everyone made this choice, what would happen to civilization? This shifts thinking from purely personal calculation to collective responsibility. Your habit of excellent work, maintained even when no one watches, contributes to your profession's standards. Your discipline elevates the field. Your slackness degrades it. Your habit of keeping commitments to your children teaches them that commitments matter. You are building character not only in yourself, but in the next generation. Your habit of informed participation in civic life contributes to democracy's functioning. Your neglect contributes to its decay. Each small discipline work done well, commitment kept, duty performed is a brick in civilization's foundation. Each neglect is a point of weakness. Do not think your actions are too small to matter. Multiplied by millions, your small actions constitute civilization's character. Someone must maintain standards even when others abandon them. Someone must go first. Let it be you. Declining civilizations make discipline seem unnecessary, even foolish. This is when it is most necessary. Maintain standards especially when others abandon them. This is your duty, not merely to yourself, but to civilization itself. Becoming what you were meant to be. The ultimate transformation is not becoming successful, wealthy, or powerful, though these may follow. It is becoming master of yourself. The man who has built beneficial habits into his daily structure, who has constructed character through patient repetition, who has established internal architecture that holds under pressure. This man has achieved something philosophers have pursued for millennia. He possesses self-mastery. He is not blown about by circumstance, enslaved to impulse, or crushed by adversity. He acts purposefully rather than reacts helplessly. He possesses agency. This is the proper goal of human life, not merely to exist, not merely to accumulate wealth or status, but but to become fully human, free, responsible, capable. The habits are not the end. They are the means by which you achieve the end of genuine human flourishing. I am now in the twilight of my years, having lived through more history than most men witness in several lifetimes. I have stood in halls of power and walked through valleys of shadow. I have tasted triumph's sweetness and endured exile's bitterness. I have led my nation through its darkest hour and been rejected by that same nation when the hour of danger passed. Looking back across 8 decades, what matters is not the positions I held or the victories I achieved. What matters is that through all of it, through crisis and calm, through applause and rejection, through war and peace, I maintained the capacity to act purposefully. The habits I established preserved this capacity. They enabled me to become what I was meant to be. Without claiming religious orthodoxy, I point to something transcendent in this practice. There is a satisfaction in living rightly, in keeping commitments to oneself, in building character stone by stone. There is a peace in this that the man of brilliant but inconstant gifts can never know. This is what the ancients called virtue, what religious traditions call righteousness, what we might simply call alignment with what one knows to be right. It possesses a spiritual dimension that mere worldly success cannot provide. You have one life. You will arrive at its end, either having become what you were capable of becoming, or having squandered your potential in comfortable weakness. The habits determine which. This is not about achievement in worldly terms, it is about whether you became master of yourself or remained slave to circumstance, impulse, and weakness. Everything necessary has been taught. You understand that crisis reveals character rather than creating it. You understand that dramatic gestures fail while patient accumulation succeeds. You understand that preparation occurs in peacetime, not during war. You understand that discipline creates freedom, that character is constructed through repetition, that habits form the architecture that supports all achievement. You understand the methods, self-assessment, starting small, linking gradually, recovering from failure. You understand the stakes, personal agency, contribution to civilization, ultimate human flourishing. The only remaining question is whether you will actually begin, not plan to begin, not intend to begin, not prepare to begin, actually begin, today, this morning, this hour. Choose one small habit, establish it. This is the first brick. Lay it, then lay the next, then the next. Within the next hour, not tomorrow, not next week. This hour, perform one small action that represents the beginning of your transformation. Write down your wake time for tomorrow morning. Perform 5 push-ups. Drink a glass of water. Write 1 sentence in a journal. This tiny action is the first brick. It matters not because it is large, but because it is first. The fortress begins now. Some will read these words, understand every principle, and still not begin. They will plan endlessly, prepare elaborately, wait for the right time. There is no right time. There is only now. Inaction is comfortable. It requires no risk, no effort, no possibility of failure. It also guarantees you remain as you are until death finds you unchanged. Reject the comfort of stagnation. Will you begin, or will you remain as you are, comfortable in weakness, until death finds you having never truly lived? I have given you the map. The journey is yours to make. But I tell you truly, it is the greatest journey any man can undertake, and its rewards surpass anything this world calls success. Set your face toward this summit. Take the first step, then the next, then the next. Never give in. Never, 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 never. The teaching is complete. The work is yours. The choice is yours. Choose well. The time is now.